Looking back now, the signs weren't obvious, and that's what makes it hurt more. She wasn't reckless. She wasn't dramatic. She was careful. Too careful. The kind of careful that feels like maturity when you want to believe in someone. She spoke about values, about loyalty, about how hard it was to find someone genuine in this world. Those conversations mattered to me, especially at my age. When you're no longer 20, words carry weight. You don't hear them as flirting. You hear them as promises in disguise. December wrapped everything in a soft glow. Holiday lights, cold evenings, familiar streets from my childhood, introducing her to pieces of my world, even if not officially. Sitting beside her at cafes, watching steam rise from coffee cups, thinking how rare it was to feel this calm with someone. There was no rush, no pressure, just an understanding that something was growing naturally. I remember one night clearly. We were walking slowly, hands almost touching, when she said, "I like how safe this feels." That word safe stayed with me. It felt like an invitation to trust. I started planning ahead without realizing it. Small thoughts, future tense, next time she visits, next holiday, next step. Not fantasies, intentions. At 33, you don't dream loudly. You build quietly. Then came the subtle shifts. A delayed response here. A canceled plan there. Nothing alarming on its own. Life happens. People get busy. That's what I told myself. That's what reasonable adults do. They don't jump to conclusions. But your body knows before your mind does. A tightness in the chest. A faint unease you can't explain. The kind you push down because you don't want to be that guy. The overthinker. The insecure one. A few days before my return flight, the truth surfaced in conversation, awkwardly, accidentally. Like a secret that slipped when it was no longer convenient to hold. She had someone else. Not in the past. Not waiting in the wings. Active, present, real. I felt my face go warm, then numb. My ears rang. I nodded as if I understood, even though nothing made sense anymore. Every memory replayed itself with a different meaning. Every smile, every quiet moment, suddenly felt borrowed. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, asking myself one question over and over. Was any of it real? Or was I just convenient? And that was the moment the story stopped. Being about connection and started. Becoming about betrayal. The days after that conversation passed in a blur. We spoke, but the words felt rehearsed, like lines read from a script neither of us believed anymore. She explained herself carefully, choosing phrases that softened the damage without ever fully owning it. I listened not because I agreed, but because I needed to understand how someone could stand in two lives at once and feel justified. She said she hadn't meant for things to go this far, that she was unhappy, that she didn't know how to end things the right way. I noticed how often her sentences centered on her confusion, her struggle, her fear. My pain sat quietly in the corner, acknowledged but never addressed. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. That surprised even me. Inside, though, something heavy settled in my chest, the kind of sadness that doesn't explode, just slowly presses down until breathing feels like work. It wasn't just losing her. It was losing the version of myself who believed this was finally something solid. When I returned to my resident country, winter was waiting. Gray skies, short days, empty rooms, the kind of cold that seeps past walls and into your thoughts. Without the distraction of family and routine, everything echoed louder. I tried to do what grown men are supposed to do. I went to work. I exercised. I told myself this was just another disappointment, another lesson learned. At night, I replayed conversations, wondering where I'd misread things, or if I ever had a chance to see the truth at all. After a few more days of talking, I made a decision. I told her I needed to end communication, not to punish her, not to make a point, but to protect myself. I explained that staying connected would only keep reopening a wound that wasn't healing. She agreed quickly, almost too easily. That should have told me something. Endings are harder when feelings are mutual. When the messages stopped, there was relief, followed immediately by emptiness. Silence has weight. It fills space you didn't realize had become occupied. I told myself I'd done the right thing, that walking away with dignity was enough, that I didn't need answers or closure beyond what I already had. For a while, I believed that. Then one evening, scrolling mindlessly just to pass time, I stumbled across something familiar, her words, her tone, her patterns, posted for strangers to see. She wasn't healing. She wasn't reflecting. She was repeating. And in that moment, the sadness shifted into something sharper. Not rage, clarity. A quiet understanding that this wasn't a mistake she'd made once. It was who she was choosing to be. And that realization changed everything. I sat with that realization longer than I care to admit. The easy path was to close the app, tell myself it wasn't my problem anymore, and let life move on. I'd already stepped away. I'd already paid my emotional dues. Why carry someone else's mess on my shoulders? Because once you see a pattern, you can't unsee it. Her post wasn't reckless or desperate. It was casual, confident. The words of someone who believed the rules didn't apply to her. She joked. She flirted. She tested the water again while a man somewhere believed he was in a committed relationship. That man had a face now in my mind. Not a villain. Not a rival. Just another ordinary person trying to build something honest. I imagined him waking up early for work, trusting the story he'd been told, defending her when doubts crept in. I'd been that person once. The thought sat heavy in my gut. I asked myself what silence would mean. Not peace, comfort, convenience, the kind that lets a lie keep breathing, because stopping it would be uncomfortable. I didn't want revenge. I wanted alignment. I wanted my actions to match the values I kept telling myself I lived by. So I gathered what already existed. Nothing fabricated. Nothing exaggerated. Messages with dates, context, a short voice note that confirmed. Identity without turning the moment into spectacle. Facts presented plainly. I created a new account. No name, no drama. Just enough distance to keep the focus where it belonged, on the truth, not on me. Before sending anything, I paused. My heart beat faster than I expected. There's a moment before you cross a line where everything feels suspended. You know you won't be able to take it back. You also know that doing nothing is still a choice. I typed carefully, explained who I was, explained what I didn't know then and what I learned later. I apologized for being the one to deliver it, because no one wants to receive that message, ever. Then I pressed send. The screen didn't change. No explosion. No immediate reply. Just the same quiet room, the same winter night. But something inside me shifted. Not relief, resolve. I had done what I believed was right, even if it came with consequences I couldn't predict. Days passed with no response. I assumed the message might be ignored or dismissed as a lie. That's often easier than facing the truth. Then, slowly, the digital world rearranged itself. Her accounts locked down. His profile changed. Her name disappeared. No public statement. No confrontation I could see. Just subtle signs that something had finally cracked. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. I sat back and exhaled for what felt like the first time in weeks, because the lie wasn't mine anymore. And for once, the truth didn't feel like a burden, it felt like release. People imagine justice as something loud, shouting, accusations, public, scenes that play out in front of an audience. But real consequences often arrive quietly, like a door closing in another room. You don't hear the slam, you just notice the draft disappear. I kept checking their profiles more than I should have. Not out of obsession, but disbelief. It was strange watching a reality shift without being present for any of the conversations that caused it. Entire relationships can end without a single word reaching the outside world. That silence said more than arguments ever could. I found myself thinking about him, not in detail, just in fragments. The moment he read the message, the pause before he played the audio, that split second where denial fights with recognition. When your mind wants to reject what your gut already knows, I imagine the questions forming. How long? How many times? Was any of it real? Questions that don't have satisfying answers, only explanations that hurt differently. And her. I pictured the realization settling in that charm doesn't shield you forever. That patterns eventually repeat loudly enough for someone to notice. That privacy settings can't undo trust once it's broken. Strangely, I didn't feel powerful. I felt tired. There's a cost to carrying truth, even when it's necessary. I replayed my own actions, wondering where the line truly was, whether I'd crossed it, or whether the line had been crossed long before I ever stepped in. I knew I wasn't innocent. I'd been part of a situation I didn't fully understand at the time. That knowledge doesn't disappear just because the outcome feels justified. Responsibility doesn't vanish when you're on the right side of the story. But I also knew this. Silence would have protected the wrong person. That thought anchored me. As the days passed, the emotional charge faded. What remained was a quiet sense of finality. Not closure. That word promises too much. Acceptance felt more accurate. The understanding that some people move through life, leaving unfinished business behind them. And occasionally, someone has to return what they dropped. I stopped checking their profiles. Life slowly resumed its rhythm. Work deadlines, routine meals, long walks where thoughts finally loosened their grip. The anger never returned. Neither did the sadness in the same way. It was replaced by something steadier: perspective. I didn't win anything. I didn't gain her. I didn't reclaim lost time. But I did reclaim my sense of self. The part of me that values honesty over comfort, integrity over avoidance. And that mattered more than I expected. Because when the noise fades and the screens go dark, you're left alone with your choices. For the first time since December, I could sit with mine without flinching. Time has a way of softening sharp edges. Weeks passed, then months, and the story that once lived loudly in my head began to settle into something smaller, something manageable. Not forgotten, just understood. I never heard from either of them. No accusations, no thanks, no closure wrapped in neat words. And strangely enough, I realized I didn't need any of that. Life isn't a courtroom. Not every truth comes with a verdict. What stayed with me was the lesson. I learned that betrayal doesn't always announce itself with cruelty. Sometimes it arrives dressed as kindness, patience, and familiarity. The most dangerous lies aren't dramatic, they're comfortable. They ask you to relax, to trust, to stop asking questions. I also learned something about myself. I learned that walking away is strength, but so is speaking up when silence protects harm. The difference lies in intention. Mine wasn't to humiliate or destroy. It was to interrupt a cycle that had already hurt more than one person. Do I wish I'd never been involved? Of course. I wish December had stayed warm and honest. I wish I hadn't had to question my judgment or replay memories searching for cracks. But wishing doesn't rewrite reality. What matters is what you do after reality reveals itself. For a long time, I thought justice meant balance, pain for pain, loss for loss. Now I see it differently. Justice is alignment. It's when your actions reflect the person you believe yourself to be, even when the choice costs you peace in the short term. I moved forward more cautiously after that. I listened more closely to patterns, not just words. I stopped romanticizing potential and started paying attention to consistency. Trust, I realized, isn't built on intensity. It's built on behavior over time. Somewhere out there, two people went their separate ways. One learned that secrecy has an expiration date. The other learned a truth that likely hurt. but freed him from a story that wasn't real. And me? I learned that doing the right thing doesn't always feel good in the moment. Sometimes it feels heavy, lonely, uncertain. But when the dust settles, when the noise fades, when you're left alone with your thoughts in a quiet room, you know whether you acted from bitterness or from principle. That night, months later, I sat with that knowledge and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Not because I'd won, but because I'd finally stopped carrying someone else's lie.